Hello, my name is Karen Crumbaker. I'm with Colorado State University, Larimer County Extension, and I would like to provide some information to help you prepare for emergencies. And the focus is going to be on making a plan. So why is this important? Disasters happen. We've seen over the past 10, 20 years, the increased number of disasters that affected people in Colorado, from wildfires to floods to tornadoes. And so hopefully this presentation will help you better prepare for any type of a disruption in your daily lives. The consequences are high. Disasters can create long-lasting negative impacts on both people and their property. You may be on your own. In the event of a disaster, government and disaster relief organizations may not be able to reach you immediately. So being prepared, having a plan will help you provide the best safety for you. Depending on the emergency, you may need a shelter in place. What will you need? What will you take if you're asked to evacuate? Have you given that any type of thought? Is there an evacuation route in place? Does each family member know what it is? So reviewing this with your family is going to be key to having a plan in effect that will help you during an emergency. Preparing now will help you feel calmer than if you are rushing about trying to remember what to collect. When an emergency is happening, that's the last thing you want to do. You want to have everything in place. You want it to be something that you've given a lot of thought to in advance. You want to minimize the short and long-term impacts on your life and your property. And you want to enable to be self-sufficient until help arrives. You want to be able to be self-sufficient until help arrives. So the first thing we're going to do is make a plan. So the first step in making a plan is to sign up with your local emergency management notification system. So you're going to want to look at your local resources or resources within your county. You're going to write down, take pictures or video each room, opening drawers and closets. And this is going to be really important. Should something happen to your home, you want to be able to have documentation of what was in the home at the time of the disaster. You're going to store the video or the photos to the cloud or off-site. And you want to store important documents such as birth certificates, social security cards, wills, or passports off-site or in a safety deposit box. So the first thing we're going to do is create a communication plan. So it's a plan that all of your family is going to be involved in, and they're going to be involved in creating this plan. So you're going to identify contacts. Who are you going to contact in the event of emergency? You're going to have immediate family members, extended family members in group homes, or neighbors. And you want to also consider including an out-of-town contact. It may be easier to make a long-distance phone call than to call across town during a disaster. Organize your contact information into a communication plan. So having a written plan in place will help eliminate a lot of concern and anxiety if an emergency were to happen. So you want to have that communication plan where each family member calls or emails the same friend or relative in the event of an emergency. Establish a meeting place in case attempts to communicate fail. So have a place away from the home where you know you can meet up with family members to let everybody know that you're okay. Review and share your communication plan. Make sure your information is complete and accurate. You're going to be updating that as needed. You want to educate family members about the plan and then test the plan. Make sure that plan works according to what your needs will be in that type of an emergency. Program your primary contacts into your cell phone. You don't want to be doing that during a disaster, so having those contacts already in place will be really helpful. And then what if you're asked to shelter in place? In certain emergencies, it's best to take shelter. If an emergency is taking place and you are unsure what to do, first plan to remain in your home, workplace, or school. Then listen to the radio or television for instructions for emergency management from emergency management officials. Where is the safest place in your home to shelter? In a tornado, for example, it might be a closet or a bathroom or the lowest level of a home without windows. It's going to depend on what type of an emergency there is, which will help determine where the best place to shelter in your home will be. Bring all family members together and pets inside. Grab your emergency supply kit, and we're going to talk about some items that you can consider placing in an emergency supply kit. Consider the hazard and choose a place in your home that is safest from that hazard. Like we just mentioned, if there was a tornado, where a safer part of your home may be to shelter in. Seal the room if air is contaminated. Call or text your emergency contacts. Let them know where you're at and that you're safe. Listen to your radio or television for updates, and remain inside until authorities say it is safe to leave or recommend that you evacuate. And so in the case of an evacuation, you want to learn the evacuation and shelter plans for disasters that are likely in your community. Identify several places in different directions where you can go. Identify family or friends you can stay with and have their contact information and in your communication plan, and that plan that you've written out prior to any type of an emergency. Familiarize yourself with alternative evacuation routes and practice with family members. Make sure everybody understands the best way to leave in the case of an evacuation. Have your emergency supply kit ready to grab. And then keep a full tank of gas if evacuation seems likely. And when I say evacuation seems likely, it's if we're having extreme dry conditions, high winds are predicted for later in the week. The possibility of a wildfire seems that it could actually happen. You just want to make sure that you're prepared and that you've done a lot of this in advance. So having a full tank of gas is part of that, being prepared. So making an emergency supply kit, you're going to want to look at having a 3-day supply of food and water. You're going to want to have non-perishable foods, dried foods, canned foods, high energy foods, foods that you can purchase that are for backpacking are good to have. They've got a long shelf life, and just adding water is the only thing that you need to do to be able to have those foods available for you. Other items would be can openers, multi-tools, a mess kit, and then whatever else that you think that the family may need to include in that food and water kit. At the end of this presentation, there is going to be a list of resources for you with websites where you can get more specific information on types of food and other items that you may want to take with you. And again, it's just going to depend on what your family needs are going to be as to what you're going to include in that emergency supply kit. You're going to have a first aid kit. And so you want to be sure that you've got that first aid kit, and oftentimes you can purchase things or purchase first aid kits that you would be able to include in your emergency supply kit. There's some additional items here that you may want to consider. Glasses, contacts, contact solutions, medications, definitely. We're going to mention that a few times throughout this presentation. So again, it's going to be dependent on what the needs of your family are, what you may want to consider to include in that emergency supply kit. Communication. So being able to stay in communication with the outside world is going to be really important. Having a battery powered radio with extra batteries, cell phone charger, and a backup battery, whistle to signal for help, 12-hour light stick, paper and pencils are all going to be important to include in that communication emergency supply kit. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, depending on what your family needs may be, it's going to be dependent on what you're going to include in that supply kit. If you've got infants or young children, you're going to want to consider formula, diapers, books, games, activity for the children to keep them entertained. And if you have pets, you don't want to forget your pets. You want to have pet food, extra water, and any medications that your pets may be on. So you definitely want to include your pets in your emergency supply kit. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the financial first aid kit and what some items that you may want to consider including in that. And that's going to be your personal identification, driver's license, military service information cards, and again, not forgetting our pet identification. Additional things that you want to include in your financial first aid kit are your housing documents, financial obligations, copies of accounts, insurance policies, sources of income, tax statements, estate planning, vehicle titles, asset information. And those are just some ideas of things that you may want to consider having copies of in your financial first aid kit. And these are all things that you will either have with you or be able to grab them if you're asked to evacuate your home. Medical information is really important. You want to have your physician's name and contact information, and that could be part of your included in your communication plan, a copy of your health insurance, records of immunization, allergies, lists of medications, copies of current prescriptions, medical information for pets, living will or power of attorneys are going to be really important to have with you as well. You're going to want to review your insurance policy and your financial paperwork to make sure that they are still accurate and current. Situations change year to year within our lives, and you just want to make sure that everything is updated. Is your homeowner's insurance coverage adequate? Do you need additional insurance like flood insurance? If you've had a wildfire that's gone through your area and has not affected your home, there's the likelihood of flood. You want to get a hold of your insurance company to make sure that you're covered for flood should a flood occur following that wildfire. And if you're renting, you want to make sure your renter's insurance is up to date. You want to store papers and electronic copies of all files in a safe location, and that includes the photographs that you've taken of your home, of each room within your home should something happen to your home. And you're going to want to have those in a fireproof or waterproof box or a safe, or in a safety deposit box in your bank, or password protected format on a flash drive or an external hard drive. So you're going to want to have all of those documents in a safe place should you need to get to them. An update, one of the things that you really want to make sure of is that you contact your insurance company on a yearly basis, or if there are any major life changes, to make sure that you're insured adequately. And as we've seen the past couple of years, the cost to rebuild have gone up significantly. So you want to make sure if something were to happen to your home that you would be covered by your insurance company to be able to rebuild that. And so you're going to want to revisit that information on a yearly basis, or like I said, after major life changes. So here's a list of resources that you can find that will have more specific information. This video was just to be able to provide a brief touch on some of the things that you may like to do or include in a communication plan in your emergency kit. These resources are excellent. That will go into more detail, provide additional information. I highly recommend that you take a look at them. Thank you so much, and hopefully this was valuable to you.